Good morning and welcome to today's Compliance Corner webinar. I'm Steve Sanashi, Head of Customer Success, and I'm joined by our Compliance Champion and Sales Director, Simon Burley.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here. And we look forward today, Stephen and I, to untangle some of the confusion around the new lettings changes coming in on the 14th of May. So without further ado, I'll pass you back to Steve to kick things off.
Super. So from the 14th of May, letting agents are going to be classed as a relevant firm by the Office of Financial Sanctions Implementation. We'll call them OFSI for short, as many around us are already doing. So this puts letting agents alongside banks, currency exchange offices, tax advisors and accountancy firms who must all report to OFSI in applicable cases. So letting agents must stay vigilant to designated persons, or you may see this as a DP for short. To simplify, a designated person means an individual or entity listed under financial sanctions regulations as being subject to specific restrictions. If a designated person attempts to let a property through you as a landlord or a tenant, this would need to be reported to OFSI as soon as is practicable. Equally, if an individual or entity has committed a break of financial sanctions, or you have reasonable suspicion that they are attempting to do so, these scenarios would also require you to report to OFSI. It's important to add that there are severe penalties in place as well, and these can vary from substantial fines right up to 7 years imprisonment, so not to be ignored. The responsibility does lie with the letting agent to ensure that they do not commence a business relationship with a sanctioned person or entity, and they need to be able to evidence that they've carried out their full due diligence.
So some of the key facts around this. One of the simple parts of the regulations is there's no lettings threshold in place. The sanctions verification and record keeping applies to all parties regardless of the rental value, because there have been some confusion around the AML regulations when you're dealing with a lettings property over €10,000. We'll come on to that. This also applies to all landlords and tenants. Similarly to AML checks for sales transactions, it applies to every beneficial owner, i.e. your landlord, and every tenant that would be listed in the tenancy agreement. The guidance does not specifically or explicitly refer to guarantors, but where present, they do play a key part in the role of the tenancy agreement. So on that basis, our recommendation is that you treat them in the same manner as the tenant in terms of a sanctions check. An agent, yourself, must formally report to OFSI if they have any proof or reasonable suspicion that a client is a designated person, or DP. A designated person has breached their sanctions even, or a designated person intends to breach their sanctions. You can report that on the OFSI website. And if you need any more information of that, come to us and we'll post some links for it as well. But simply put, the AML regulations for lettings have not changed. The OFSI regulation is in addition to this. AML regulations apply for sales-only agents or sales and letting agents where you receive a single payment and or monthly rent that is €10,000 or more. If either of these apply to your lettings business, you must be registered with HMRC for money laundering supervision. If you never receive monthly rentals or a single payment of €10,000 plus and do not have a sales arm to your business, HMRC registration is not required. Being registered or failing to renew your registration is actually one of the biggest reasons for fines being issued by HMRC. In January to September 24, the fine window between those months was £1.8 million for agents who had forgot to register themselves with HMRC for AML supervision. In event of money laundering suspicion, these matters would still need to be raised with the NCA or the National Crime Agency on their portal as a suspicious activity report. Some have confused things where OFSI have said that sanctions regulations applies regardless of rental value. The AML rules do work with the €10,000 or more threshold, so it's important you do not muddle the two up.
So how do you prepare? The biggest thing right now is to make a start. And it can feel overwhelming when you first come into contact with the regulations, but as you begin to familiarise, it does make more sense and becomes much easier to process. Consider the obligations and where best they fit into your current process. Typically, within the pre-tenancy workflow, making this a fixed part of your internal process will ensure it falls part of your actions every time. We will touch on the specific timings of checks on the next slide as well. So what does this mean? Why are we doing it? Providing the understanding and the purpose of the regulations is a great way to help your team understand and digest what is required of them. Once set up correctly, it becomes a process, rinse and repeat, and your team's confidence will grow. You can share materials and webinars like today to support their understanding. But on top of this, Landmark Agent Academy run various regulatory courses for our clients to learn from. And we provide a certificate of completion as well. So this can be used to evidence your learning, especially useful when adhering to HMRC's requirements as well. A letting specific course is in the pipeline and due to arrive with us shortly. We'll be quick to communicate that to our wider clients as well. An absolutely critical step in all of this is to record your activity and findings for each individual so you can clearly evidence the steps you've taken and outcomes you have reached. Without this, all of your efforts are wasted and leaves your business open to scrutiny. There has not been much discussion about off-sea inspections like we see HMRC already carrying out, but we're expecting this to gain more attraction and ramp up as letting agents start to adhere to the new guidance from the 14th of May.
So as we move into the new world, the timing of the verification is absolutely crucial. And if we look back to the AML regulations, the timing of that is crucial. So it's all about when you do it to make sure you're fitting and you're doing it to comply with the guidance out there. So you will need to verify all landlords of the property at the point of instruction. That's really straightforward one and easy to comprehend. Now, when we talk about point of instruction, I'm going to relate this back to the AML guidance because it's kind of similar in my mind. When you're dealing with a vendor, you have to run an AML check at the point before you enter a business relationship. So at the point of instruction, the start of that business relationship with the landlord, to me, makes a lot of sense. Tenant verification happens a little later, and you have some flexibility to choose when it's right for you. From a regulatory standpoint, you need to verify a tenant before a tenancy agreement is signed. But is the best time to check a tenant? But when is the best time to check a tenant against a sanctions list? Do you sort of leave it to the last minute or do you pull it forward? The alternative is that we're recommending as best practice would be to complete the sanction once the tenant, to complete the sanction check on the tenant, I should say, once an offer has been accepted. So check it on the tenant once an offer has been accepted. At that early point, get it out of the way so there's no surprises coming down the line. This gives you more time to process the individual, but more importantly, you get to learn of any hurdles or concerns much sooner in the process. Makes a lot of sense. But really, it's about what works for you best. But completing the check before the tenancy agreement is signed is a non-negotiable, so you have to have it done by that point. Another point that keeps popping up is the situation for guarantors. As we said earlier, or I said earlier, they do not specifically feature in the regulations, which is probably the reason we keep seeing questions around them. And when we put this webinar out, we had a number of questions coming to us about that as well. We recommend, as we said, to treat a guarantor in the same way you would treat a tenant. The reason for this is the guarantor does play that key role in the tenancy, and you could find yourself in a position where you're receiving monies from them. With this in mind, it is better to have completed your due diligence at the start on those individuals so you have peace of mind around the full agreement or transaction. Steve, over to you.
Thank you. So, could you manually check the sanctions list each time? And the short answer is yes, you could. And the even better news is that it's completely free to do so. However, it doesn't feel like a reliable or confidence-inspired method to verify your clients with or to check if they're a designated person. We ran a check on Roman Abramovich, the former Chelsea Football Club owner, who was also of Russian nationality. We use him as we know he has sanctions imposed. Searching by his name, we receive 51 results on screen. Immediately, there is a lot to sift through to review against the result matches that were presented. We refine the search by including Roman's middle name. I'm not going to try and say it, but that's his actual middle name, and we pop that into the search as well. This actually increased the search results to 52. So we've added one extra person on there. We were rather expecting this number to drop from 51 to something quite lower, but it didn't, and we were a little bit perplexed by that. Roman actually appeared about halfway down the list, so after lots of scrolling, we came across his name. There are sorting options on the screen, but they are not seamless and can still leave you having to trawl through the list each time. There are very little indicators against each sanctioned individual to help break the list down further. So we'd be looking for something like a date of birth, something to really help you narrow the manual lookup down and conclude that that is or is not the person that you're verifying. With so many results displayed, it will naturally be a slow process to work through with confidence and complete the task with certainty and peace of mind. It can be done, but it won't be right for most agents, and it will become a very time-consuming exercise, multiplied many times per month, overlaid by the fear of human error for such a laborious task. But there is a better way.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. There is a better way where you can comply with Landmark, and that's the reason you're on this webinar. But property, moving away from ourselves, Property Mark have long been campaigning for full AML regulations to apply to all lettings transactions, regardless of value. They've been talking about this for some time, actually. So while on the 14th of May, the changes that are coming in are a step in the right direction, there is a school of thought that it's not quite enough. And therefore, Property Mark are recommending for lettings agents, you still run a full, or you start to run a full AML check on their clients to protect yourselves and your business. And the last thing any letting agent wants is a scandal or a property of theirs to be caught up in the books around the sanctions issue. So by running a full AML check with ourselves, both sanctions and PEPs are automatically included in the screening, giving you peace of mind that it's a safe process. Plus, you've completed further due diligence as part of your client onboarding. So what we do with ourselves is you simply add in a name, date of birth, and address, and we roll the full AML check. We'll do a full sanction screening for you. You can also include a land registry check on there as well from a landlord point of view, to make sure they do actually own the property. You could even take it a step further with the landlords. We do have a lot of agents doing this, running full facial recognition on them because they want to make sure that someone is not pretending to own that property. So there's a number of options we add within the system that take it that step further. And we firmly believe that as we move down the line in the coming months, years, at some point soon it will change and you'll be putting yourself in the best position. And as Steve actually mentioned earlier on in the call, it's not just about a simple check and doing it quickly on an online system, because on the previous slide, Steve demonstrated how hard it is to do manually, frankly, and consistently. An electronic system will do it fast. We'll have it done in a matter of less than a minute for you, with the results coming back incredibly quickly and consistently. You'll be able to audit it, show it if you were inspected. But beyond that as well, you have the full training suite and support from our dedicated customer success managers, free access to the AML regulations and training for staff. And also, we've updated our entire policy, AML policy and procedures templates that you can use for your business. So after you've seen this, drop us a line and we'll send all those through to you. And if you're a client of ours already, you've probably already had information regarding that. So, there are quicker ways to do it than doing it manually. There are easier ways, there are faster ways, there are more consistent ways. And then there are layers of security that we can add on if you want to go down those routes as well. So, excellent. But I do believe now we have had some questions come through, Steve, when we put the webinar out there. So I think we're going to sort of run through them. We've collated them to the sort of the most popular questions. I think it's about 7 or 8 questions. So we'll run through the questions and how we would answer them now. However, if you did have questions that you sent in, or you have questions that haven't been answered by this, again, our details will be at the end. please jump on and drop us a line, and we'll answer them, as quickly as we can. But over to you, Steve.
Super. Well, I'm going to put you straight in the hot seat. I'm going to run through these questions now. So let's take a look at the first one. So, do I need to inform my landlords and tenants that a check is being run?
Yes, you do. Because it's part of an AML check, it will leave a what's called a soft footprint on their credit file. If I'm being honest, within our system, I've run about 950,000 checks on myself, and I'm just checking and doing things on the system. It will have no effect on their credit file whatsoever, but it will show on their credit file. So we have wording that we deliver within our system that we can give to you that you need to have made people aware of by putting it in your T's and C's or having it at the bottom of an email or a letter that you send to them. You don't have to talk them through it, but you have to have informed them somehow.
Super. And do we need to verify property ownership?
Yes, because this is an absolute non-negotiable part of compliance, or actually just good business practice. We're integrated with the Land Reg for this reason, because we found agents some time ago, every time they're instructed on a new rental property or a new sales property, one of the things they absolutely need to know is that individual, the person that owns that property. A lot of people take a risk-based approach and will say it was pretty obvious they live there or we met them at the property, but it's always good to double check and have that that backup on file and that certainty documented. Because if you run a Land Reg, you've run, for instance, a facial recognition to say I am the individual. Effectively, you've ticked all the right boxes. But the answer is yes. In short.
And what if the property is held in a company name?
Well, in that case, you absolutely need to identify the company that it's held under. You need to identify the directors, the shareholders, the people with significant control, i.e. people with 25% share or more of that property. Now, again, you can do that manually. You can go to Companies House to do that. Equally, on our system, we have ways for you to do that electronically, which document it and audit it for you. Again, keeping it all in that one space. When you've run that and you've identified the structure, and as with everything, if there is a complex structure, you're going to have to dig to the end of that complex structure. But that's where Stephen's customer success team can absolutely help you with that. When you've identified the individuals, as it says there, you need to run those checks to confirm they're not the designated person, or ultimately, they're not on the sanctions list, which is the same thing. But I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So you need to dig down to the sort of nth degree again, which can be hard. But again, that's why we're here. Equally, it can be really quite easy. It's just a simple company name. It's run by Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and you run the checks on them. But any complexities, any issues, that's what we're here to help with.
And is there an obligation to carry out ongoing checks?
Well, no, there's not. The checks need to be current and can be run for each new tenancy, landlord-tenant, for example. For portfolio landlords, running periodic checks and keeping a constant view of the client. Now, what we mean by that is if you've got a landlord and they've got, let's say, 10 properties and they're constantly transacting with you, you'll have a relationship with that landlord. So you're going to have to run a check on that individual landlord when the guidance changes on the 14th. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to conduct a check every single time one of their properties come up. The way we've always tackled it is you probably want to run one every 12 months. But if nothing materially changes with that individual or the transactions, i.e., you're talking to them, they're letting out the properties, it's all as it was, you're probably okay to kind of keep those checks and just evidence the check you ran a couple of months ago on that individual. So if anything material changes, you might want to rerun those checks. Anything suspicious crops up or doesn't look right, you want to rerun them. But for your average landlord who's got a portfolio of multiple properties and you've got that relationship with him, I'd be running a check every so often, but I would say at least every 12 months. And as part of yours, so just one more thing on that, Stephen, and we'll come on to this question in a sec. As part of that, with anyone that you transact with, tenants, landlords, etc., if anything absolutely changes in that relationship over the period of time, you might want to run another check again. But it's really down to the way that you monitor and continue to speak to people in the transaction as well. So, sorry. Nothing
Thank
back
you.
to that side. Yeah.
This one came up a fair bit. So, do I need to run sanctions checks on student lets?
I added something to this, Steve, so you might not have seen this. The answer is yes. Now, we did have a very specific question come in from a good client of ours, and I'll tackle that. The regulations don't separate the type of rental agreements. It is a rental agreement. Yeah, a student let is treated in the same way. Now, what you get at this time of year is, and I know this because my daughter's in university at the moment, is that she's already agreed the tenancy on her flat that she's renting for September onwards. All the paperwork's done, deposit's done, everything's signed off. She's moving in with friends. The fact of the matter is that if this is the case for yourself and you've got probably multiple flats that have set up 2, 3, 450, 20, however many it is, where you've got people moving in September, you're going to have to go back and retrospectively run these checks because they're moving in after the 14th of May. So it's potentially going to be a bit of a, how do I say this without swearing? It's going to be a hard job to do, and you're going to have those conversations, and it's not going to be easy. But in order to comply, because it happens after the 14th of May when they're moving, you're going to have to run those checks. So not an easy one. Probably not the answer our clients wanted to hear, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Again, we're here to help. We can help. But give us a call if you've got any questions on that.
It's possibly the worst possible timing for the student marketplace, actually.
Absolutely.
Can a license be issued if sanctions are in place?
It's possible, but it's not certain or far from certain. The idea being here is when you come across someone on the sanctions list, which will be quite rare, when you report it to OFSI, there might be grounds for you to apply for a license in order to continue that transaction. We're not entirely sure what that looks like, what the communications will look like, and how OFSI will report that back to you. But it is possible if there are some mitigating circumstances to the transaction. Till we really see it play out and how they deal with it, and clients come back to us, then we'll have a better idea, and we can put a sort of follow-up webinar together, probably touching on some of these questions again with more knowledge. So at the minute we're looking at the guidance, what the guidance says, how it works in sort of the real world is going to be slightly different, or maybe slightly different.
Section 6 of the sanctions guidance itself does have a whole segment dedicated to this part of the regulation as well. So well worth a look if this was to come up for you.
Absolutely.
What do you do if you find or suspect a sanctions breach?
The fact is you've got to report it to OFSI. Yeah. And I'd be reporting it as soon as I can. There is a link on their website to do that. And then I'd be taking a steer from OFSI themselves in terms of the next steps. Steve, have you come across this more? Do you have any sort of anything else to add to this one? I mean, it's one of those where you've just got to take the action that's required of you, really, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's safety first. Any suspicion with Landmark Agent, it will detect a hard answer for you with a clear direction. So with that outcome or the suspicion, get that report in earlier. It's a bit backdated in the way that you need to report, and we'll come to that on the next question. But yeah, timing is of the essence here, and that the guidance says as soon as is practicable. So yeah, they want you to act with speed and being direct to get those raised if they were to arise for one of your properties. And leading in nicely, how do I make an OFSI report?
Well, do you know what? As this is the last question, Steve, I'm going to let you answer this because I've done enough answering the questions. So over to you.
Very kind of you. So firstly, the QR code on screen will direct you to the reporting section. So if you want to scan that, and it's worth doing today just to familiarise with what it looks like and what's being asked of you. On there, you'll see a form. So just like the red and white table we can see, it is I think it's a Word document form. So it's very traditional, shall we call it? It's going to be quite laboursome to complete. So you'd have to go in and download that form, complete it to the best of your knowledge, and then we're emailing it through to the OFSI at hmtreasury.gov.uk. And within their instruction, they've asked to clearly mark the subject that it's a sanctions breach as well, so it can be picked up swiftly and efficiently. But yeah, unfortunately, it's just we're not talking about portals or fancy flagging systems. It's a Word document to complete and then to send that via email as an attachment. So get that done as soon as it's applicable and it needs to happen. It's a time-based thing, so demonstrate that you have tackled this in the right way and you are committed to following the regulations, and that will be responded to you as swiftly as possible. They don't specify exactly, but they will come back to you and communicate on the next steps from there.
Excellent. Let's just hope they update the system at some point soon. But I think that completes all the questions, all the main questions we had. I think, as we said, or as I said earlier, any questions that you have that haven't been answered, or if they've not been answered for yourself as clearly as you'd like them to be, please get in contact with us. Details are on the screen there, QR codes as well. Our names are here. You can find us on LinkedIn. But I mean, ultimately, this kind of brings us to the end of the webinar. And thanks for joining us today. We hope that we've given you further confidence or some more confidence ahead of the 14th of May. Again, if you're a client of ours, your customer success manager is on hand to support you. Email or call them directly. You should have their details. But most importantly, don't feel overwhelmed. It's about breaking it down to small steps. There's not too many steps, but just keeping it consistent and just making it part of that process that you follow. And if anything changes or when anything changes going forward, we'll be on hand to update you with another webinar, just to explain the changes. But look, we're here to help now and going forward. So from myself, I hope you have a great day. I hope this has been worth it. And Steve, any final words?
Super. I would just point back to the QR codes there before we leave you today. So the sanctions regs is one. Have a look through. It will look daunting at first sight, but that's there and useful to have in reach as well. Secondly, we've got the option to book in some dedicated time with one of our experts as well. So we have a team here that Simon's our compliance champion. We've got a team of people that are able and on hand to support you with just the guidance and the questions that you may be facing right now. So please do, if you scan it, that will allow you to book in a time of your convenience. Super, relax. We just want to help and make sure that you're prepared as best as possible for the 14th of May. So our team are on hand to do that. Thank you very much. And as Simon said, we welcome any follow-up questions that you do have off the back of today or down the line. Feel free to reach out, client or not a client. Let us know. We'll do our best to help. But again, thank you for your time today. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be running more of these in the future. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks very much.